Medizin und Musik sind jetzt zu Zwillingsschwestern geworden und beide sind strenge Naturwissenschaft. Die Musik hat durch die germanische Neue Medizin oder germanische Heilkunde im Zusammenhang mit der umwälzenden Entdeckung der Zweiphasigkeit in der Musik durch Professor Giovanna Conti eine ganz neue Perspektive bekommen: die archaischen Melodien.
Hello my dear friends and welcome to this new video. Many of you asked me to speak about the healing properties of Dr. Hammer's song Mein Studentenmädchen. Actually, the comparison between the music and the 5 biological laws of Die Germanische Heilkunde and the following research I had the honor to carry on together with Dr. Hammer in person revealed something that deserves to be shared. First of all, it should be noted that the 5 biological laws of the Germanische Heilkunde make a whole system. We do know that any scientific system is made of interconnected laws. This means that since we can apply one law, we must be able to apply the other ones. This should be valid for all scientific systems that deserve to be considered as such. What is more, to be considered as such, any scientific system should meet the criteria of reproducibility and repeatability of the laws on which it is grounded. The system of the 5 biological laws is valid in 100% of cases. I mean, not submitted to interpretable statistics. According to a pure scientific attitude, be a system built on mathematics or physics or music field, it should work as a fil rouge that brings to the following evidence: everything in the cosmos is interconnected. For sure, the system of the 5 biological laws represents the fil rouge of my personal research, but of course, it is not the only scientific system in the world. Nonetheless, contrary to other valid scientific systems, the one of the 5 biological laws includes a law that both produces and crowns the other 4. I'm referring to the 5th law, the quintessence, what serves as a wheel that always points to the level where every behavior, be it of cells, of brain, or organs, responds to a wider, often higher meaning. The amazing step of enunciating the quintessence in scientific field was due to the person of Dr. Hammer, who expressed the best qualities of a man meant as a prism that reflects and spreads the light he receives. It is not coincidence that Dr. Hammer chose the rune man, what we know as algiz, inserted in a crocus to represent his entire system. Here, once again, it must be said that Dr. Hammer was a theologian apart from being a medical doctor. He was a deep knower of ancient texts, what allowed him to properly explore new languages and possibilities. When such a man takes his scientific journey like Dr. Hammer did, there's no doubt about the success he will achieve. But why am I telling this to you? How does it fit in? Well, Mein Studentenmädchen is a very simple song. I mean, it does not realize all the criteria of the so-called classical music meant as the demonstration of technical skills. Of course, skills are needed and much appreciable. Nonetheless, most of the so-called classical works, especially those composed by composers who merely serve technical rules, are admirable examples of musical architecture. But as a famous composer said, what's in the score? Everything but the essential. And what is this essential behind the score? In my opinion, the quintessence, I mean the ineffable, sublime, inspired condition of those composers who are able to get in touch with the cosmos and have special access to the healing vibrations offered by Mother Nature under the shape of significant biological special programs. For those who have never met Dr. Hammer in person, it must be said that he emanated a huge amount of positive energy, and this was combined with a supernatural intelligence, definitely, what allowed him to be so creative. So, mein Studentenmädchen can look even rough to a trained and somehow contaminated ear. Nonetheless, its perfect and simple structure makes its essence immediately audible. It is interesting to notice that the song begins with Ich liebe, I love. Dr. Hammer actually loved nature, he loved the cosmos, he loved his job, and amazingly, he was able to love his friends as well as his enemies, and for sure, he adored his wife, Sigrid. As he used to say, the one of falling in love is a conflict run by Mother Nature as an SBS program. After 20 years of marriage, he was still so in love with his wife that he was able to compose with a great enthusiasm a song that celebrated their 20th anniversary of marriage. So, in 1976, Dr. Hammer converted his love to words and notes. Few years later, the same love that inspired Mein Studentenmädchen would allow Dr. Hammer to discover the 5 biological natural laws. So now, what's about the healing properties of the song? Well, if we want to define the adjective healing as taking a pill to erase the symptoms and get back to the same identical conditions that caused the symptoms, this is not the case. But if we consider healing as a process, a chance to get over a hurdle in order to evolve, to gain a stronger or better condition, yes, this is the case. No need to say that there are plenty of amazing experiments and studies that show how susceptible we are towards the electromagnetic information all around. And these studies show how our DNA, as an antenna, constantly shares information with the cosmos. And the 5 biological laws prove how the SBS programs with which we react to the environment are coded in our DNA as survival programs. As published in my book Phenomenology of Music, my piano teacher, Americo Pascual Caramuta, who was a theologian and an engineer, apart from being a pianist, was fascinated by that special energy called photons and the role it plays in our musical vision and interpretation. Some honest physicists actually published studies where they show how our DNA is affected by being deprived of photons, what makes us feel like deprived of light. And since our DNA is touched by any deprivation, so our body is affected. And that's why our organism, psyche, brain, and organ activates proper special programs in order to re-establish coherent vibrations. Now, let's get back to Dr. Hammer's song, Mein Studentenmädchen. At the time he composed his song, few years before the discovery of Die Germanische Heilkunde, Dr. Hammer was able to express the essence of what he would discover as SBS programs actually. I mean, the biological, meaningful way set by Mother Nature for re-establishing our lost balance and deal now stronger and smarter with the new challenges of life. Everybody knows that a process to regain a lost balance must include a phase, at least one phase, where we feel pretty unbalanced. I always keep in mind what Dr. Hammer used to recommend me when he saw that I was trusting me too much. Giovanna, remember that in science we must be humble. So I'm not telling you, hey, listen to Mein Studentenmädchen and you will be healed from any symptom. But I can tell you as a musician and as one of Dr. Hammer's close friends that the essence of his song is his own essence. Joy, generosity, warm hands, warm heart. What nowadays seems to be measurable with vibrations, frequencies, and notes. And what does it mean here? As published in my book, The Biological Meaning of Music, along with the two phases, Mein Studentenmädchen meets the criterion of the golden section, the mathematical proportion used by artists of all times. For example, Claude Debussy is one of those who consciously applied the golden section to their composings. In general, the golden section is considered to be an aesthetical measure, as it might be perceived mainly as a static condition, kind of snapshot. What later scientists discovered, recalling ancient studies, as it always happens, is that the golden section gives the perfect ratio to the development of life, considering the dive-in proportion from a dynamic point of view. Possibly our DNA is based on this proportion too. For sure, sound vibrations respond to this criterion, but I will deepen this topic in the next video, focusing on Kepler's work. In addition to what I said, it must be pointed out that at a certain point, Dr. Hammer chose to tune his song at 432 Hz according to the so-called frequencies of the Earth, the Schumann resonance. What does it mean, GNM speaking? It is known that the German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann discovered that the Earth's base resonance is 8 Hz. Schumann understood that this resonance reacts to the stimuli coming from the magnetic field surrounding the Earth, for example, to lightings. Actually, Dr. Hammer described the Hammer focus as the response to a magnetic stimulus, kind of short circuit in the brain that triggers proper SBS programs running synchronously on the 3 levels, psyche, brain, organ, changing their way of vibrating. And today, thanks to the archaic melody, we know that these programs are processed by the sound. It's nice to notice here that ancient Romans said Homo mundus minor, which means the man is a word in miniature. So, it seems that singing, playing, praying, reciting mantras at 8 Hz and multiples, as well as naturally yawning, sneezing, coughing, crying, mooing, roaring, barking, meowing, helps aligning with the frequencies both of the Earth and the magnetic field we live in, widening our capability of interacting with the cosmos and get precious information from it, contrary to the current and unfortunately most popular mentality. So, my friends, here's what mein Studentenmädchen hides. Dr. Hammer's invaluable gifts to humankind include this little precious song, whose essence helps us stay connected as if it was a stargate with the cosmos and the loving, healing attitude of Mother Nature towards its creatures, man included. Please, now let me close this conversation with a nice tale that could be clarifying of what I've said so far. I was young, I was rehearsing just before playing the Beethoven Sonata 111 at the International Piano Competition in Turin. And technically speaking, I wasn't playing well at all. But I was applying the criteria of the phenomenology of piano technique by Karamuta, who was actually defined the pianist with the spiritual touch, because after his concerts, part of the audience left the building magically healed. At the time, rather than on how to perfectly play the piano, I was focused on something more interesting, at least for me, like falling in love with a tremendous guy. So I'm sure all my photons were there trying to give me the most beautiful aura to win the heart of my future boyfriend. I was rehearsing at the piano on the stage in the hall of the competition building, and even if I was making mistakes here and there, I was tremendously enjoying playing, especially the second movement of the sonata, which is amazing. Once I finished my rehearsal, a man with tears in his eyes approached me and told me, "I'm the doorman, miss, and please allow me to thank you, because listening to you playing Beethoven made me feel healed." About the competition, I didn't even qualify the time because I missed too many notes. But I remember what the doorman told me as one of the best compliments I've ever received. So, what's in the score? What most times is in the therapy. Everything but the essential.